a student can check out a book anywhere in that library. And we want to make sure the content is appropriate.
Give me one more of these 19.
There was a book called George that used to be called Melissa. It was at the elementary level. And it had some pretty graphic content of describing genitalia in the book. And it was in a library where a 5-year-old could check it out.
When you said it was named George?
George. And then it was changed to Melissa. The
book was?
The author changed the name to Melissa. It was originally published as George, and then it became Melissa because George became Melissa in the book. We've seen school districts take more and more parental responsibility away from parents. And I will tell you, I think we as a public school system have done a really poor job because we've taken on way more than we can do well. The overwhelming feedback from our community, almost 4-1, was they don't belong in our library. They don't have educational value. They are obscene in nature, and therefore they should be removed from our library.
Should parents of school kids have approval over what they get to read in school? Well, we'll find out. But first, subscribe and like our channel. Click on that little bell icon for notifications. And please find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. So from the Elizabeth School District, Dan Snowberger. I think I got that right. You're the superintendent there, but you were a teacher's pet, weren't you?
I had 4 siblings, so I knew what teachers wanted, so I guess that helped me.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, John.
Yes,
I was a complete kid.
Yes, John, I was at times.
So the Elizabeth School District is east of Castle Rock. It's a pretty small school district, right?
About 2,600 students.
Okay. You're getting sued by the ACLU, and I want to understand this. Your schools have libraries, and unlike many libraries now, they actually have books in the libraries. And was it you that didn't like some of the books? Or was it the parents didn't like some of the books? It seems like it's harder to get some of these books. What books are we talking about?
You know, we to start from the beginning, if I can. The process that we were going through was empowering parents, a curriculum resource committee that was made up of parents, community members, teachers, administrators, and a board member. They began looking at our curriculum, and during my first year in the district, we had parents who would bring certain books to our attention and say, my kid checked this out from the library, and I'm a little concerned about it. And so the board empowered that committee to take a look at our library and to see, you know, what are the materials contained within. We want to be transparent with our families, and maybe we have books that parents might want to know about. And
when you say, first of all, how long have you had this job?
This is 2 years.
2 years. All right, so we're pretty new in it.
Yep.
When you say our library, is there one library for the entire school district? You're talking about every school has its own?
Every school has its own library. So
Okay.
we have elementary libraries, we have middle school library, and a high school library. So,
And I remember my library in grade school. It was like 3 shelves. It didn't have a whole lot of stuff, but it was fun to hang out there because then you were in that class. What books exactly did somebody bring your attention to? Give me one example, and we'll get to some others.
13 Reasons Why is a great example of a book. 13 Reasons Why is highlighting a particular student and outlines a number of ways that children can actually commit suicide. And there's a Netflix story on that as well that brought attention to it. We found out in the review of our library books that we happen to have that library at the middle school.
All right, so in the middle school, there's a book called 13 Reasons Why. I'm assuming this is not like a Hemlock Society book on how to kill yourself, is it?
No, it's not.
I'm assuming it's something to convince kids not to commit suicide. Would I be right?
It actually does not have an anti-suicide message, which is actually one of the concerns. It actually, to some degree, glorifies suicide, which is a concern when you have children who are struggling.
Is that an interpretation, or would an objective reader look at this and say, Yeah, they want these kids to off themselves.
It is actually a common book that school districts have expressed concern about across the country. So the way we identified it was we looked at lists of books that other districts had considered to be concerning. And we actually began checking our catalog against that list. Now, we didn't just say it's on that list, we must get rid of it. Many of those books we labeled again as sensitive topic. And so our goal and our effort in our school district, both the board and myself, has been really to empower parents to make decisions for their children. The school districts across the country have taken on more and more responsibility, and we're trying to put that back to parents. You know, you're raising your kids. It's not our job to raise your kids.
How many books in total have you found, or has this oversight committee found sensitive or concerning?
There's about 120 sensitive books. 19 of them rose to the level of we need further community input, and those are the books in question. There was 19 books out of 50,000 in our collection that really caused concern from.
Give me another example.
Another example, Ellen Hopkins has a number of books. Scream is one of those books. Again, very adult content, very graphic sexual engagement of individuals within that book. It's rated at 18 above, and yet we had it in our library. And
A library for which kids?
at the high school. So again, high schoolers are 14 to 18. And here's a book.
I don't want to break your heart, but 14-year-olds know a lot more than you realize they
do.
know.
They do.
And so they're pretty tuned in. They probably get more from Instagram and TikTok
Correct.
than what they're getting from the book. So is it just that they talked about sex, or was it an explicit sex scene? And if it is an explicit sex scene, could you read it to me very slowly?
Yeah. I don't have it with me, but I will tell you that our board members did read excerpts from these books at a board meeting to make sure our community knew what we were considering. We weren't looking at removing books just for the sake of removing books. It wasn't because of the viewpoint or the ideology in the book. It was graphic sexual content that we felt like didn't belong in a school. Our school libraries are to support our curriculum program. That's not something in our curriculum program. We're not trying to.
Just so we can have three, give me one more example.
Another example is The Hate You Give.
The Hate
You Give. So The Hate You Give is a book that outlines a point of view of law enforcement, outlines a point of view of targeted individuals within communities. It has about 82 instances within that book of the F word. It's riddled with lots of harsh language. And it was a book that, again, was at our middle school.
It's in your middle school, not your high school.
Correct.
Middle school.
It was in the high school as well. But the concern started from it's in the middle school where you have 11-year-olds.
It sounds like a Black Lives Matter sympathetic book. Would I be right?
I would say it could be considered that.
Right. So is it the F words that bothered you and the parents, or is it the political point of view of Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, not the political point of view. It was truly the content within the book and the language within the book and the denigration of law enforcement without another perspective. It was very clearly a book that.
Is it a novel?
It's not a novel. It's a restating of a story. So maybe you'd call it a novel. I would say it's more nonfiction than it is fiction.
All right. So you've got these books. This committee. I want to make sure I got this correct. People who were employed by the school district, somebody from the school board, and concerned parents.
Parents and community members. So parents.
And did you choose them all, or
the board did?
Okay.
We have 3 board committees. We have a curriculum review committee, a district advisory council, and a financial advisory council. So our board, when they first were seated, went out to the community and said, "Do you have interest in these committees?" And individuals within our community applied, and ultimately they selected a parent from each school to be on that committee.
Were there lots of people who wanted to be on this? So
wasn't an overwhelming number. but there were a couple of parents from each
I guess I'm
school.
trying to figure, was this committee stacked? In other words, you agree with me politically, I'm going to put you on this committee.
No, no, it was truly parents outlined their purpose for wanting to be on the committee. And the curriculum review committee, their job is not library books, although it was one of their first charges. Their job was to participate in curriculum selection. So the days when we used to adopt a curriculum where books were displayed, teachers tried out different curriculums, that was the original intent, was as we adopt new curriculum, we want to make sure it represents the values of our community, and who better than members of our community.
So
to
I've
be on
heard
that
this
committee.
story in various media reporting, and it sounds like you banned these books, that you had 19 naughty books, kind of like George Carlin's 7 Dirty Words, and you said, nope, we're kicking them out. They are not allowed in our school district. They're gone, which obviously the ACLU says, wait a minute, that's censorship. We can't have it.
Right. They're not banned because honestly, these books are available in our public library. They're available from Amazon. You can get it delivered to your front doorstep at 4 tomorrow morning if you want them. The reality is we believe our library should support the curriculum program. Our library is not a public library. We only have so much space within our library. Again, we have 50,000 books. So your example of a couple of shelves of books, our libraries are pretty robust, and yet we believe they should support the curriculum program. When we found these books, what the board did was to say, let's let our community weigh in on this. And so the 19 books were put on a list. We sent out communication to our parents and to our community and said, these are books that were identified. We love your feedback. So we had parents, grandparents come in and review the books and give the board feedback. And it was
When you
through
ask
that
the
feedback.
community, I get concerned about soft words like community or parents. When you said parents, we want your feedback, was that like a mass email to all parents or just to the ones at the PTA?
No, it went out to all parents. So all of our communication goes out to anyone, including grandparents, anyone who signed up with a student as an emergency contact. Those emails are captured into our mass communication
So every single
system.
parent or guardian got a notification, hey, we want your feedback on this.
Yep, that these were books that were identified as we'd like your feedback. Again, this is all in time with the sensitive topic list. So again, there were a lot of books that have sensitive topics that are not removed from our library. They are flagged. So a parent who may not want their child reading a book that might have graphic violence can opt out. And so when the child tries to check out a book that's been tagged as having graphic violence, that child stole it. Sorry, your parents indicated you're not allowed to check it out.
I just want to make sure I've got the numbers right.
Sure.
So how many sensitive books are there?
It's about 130, 140.
Okay. And there are 19 books that I will use the pejorative and say, they've been banned. Even if I give my kid permission to read these books, I'm not going to find them in the Elizabeth School District libraries in those schools.
Correct. They would not get them off of our shelves.
The other ones, though, are they on their shelves?
The others are on the shelves in the same location they always were. We didn't create a sensitive topic section.
There's no porn section in the grade school library.
No.
Because that would be pretty darn funny.
Exactly. No, there is none. There's no separation of these books. They're flagged for content. They're not even flagged on the book itself. They're flagged in the catalog system. And so if a parent chooses not to opt their child out, they do receive an email saying your child has checked out a book that's on the sensitive topic list. That way the parent, if they want to be aware of that, they can check. If they don't.
Is there any way for a parent to say, I don't want him having any of those books, so when my kid goes to check it out, a big thing pops up and underage, kick him out of the bar. He's not allowed to have
this. No, a parent can opt out. They can opt out of sensitive topic books. That includes books.
And that means the kid cannot.
They cannot.
Otherwise, the kid can check it out.
Absolutely.
But mom and dad are going to get an email
An email.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. And our board was very careful to do that because they don't want to assume there aren't parents who feel that their child's mature enough to read books with sensitive content. So we really, again, put it back to parents to make that decision for their children.
Well, then, by the same token, let me press you on this. What if a parent says, hey, there's these 19 books. I'm okay with those too. I want my kid to have the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to look at those
Yep.
books too.
Yep.
But you,
Mm-hmm.
mean mister, have taken that choice away from me.
Taken the choice away from them checking out at the school library. But there's a public library right down the street that has all of those books
And
available.
are all 19 of those books at the public
I
library?
believe they are. I
Okay.
believe, yeah, we have checked that.
So it's more inconvenient if you wanted to see it. All right. Tell me about the lawsuit. Who is suing you and over what exactly? Because you got to be honest. This is an easy thing to vilify you for. It's got
Absolutely.
look at the prudish religious guys. They don't want those kids to know the truth about what goes on there, and so we're going to ban books. And why don't you just have a book burning? Do it Elizabeth School style. I can see how the story gets spun. What actually happened?
What actually happened is there were a couple of parents who are plaintiffs in this case who have sued the district to put those books back on their shelves. The ACLU has connected with them and hired an attorney's firm to represent them and filed the lawsuit against the school district. Again, many will say, why not just put them back? Why not just avoid this? I think we as a district have really taken the position of we want to empower parents to make important decisions for their children. And that these are books that don't fit the age range where they were available. These are not bad books, John. These are books that are bestsellers in the adult community. We're in no way saying these are bad books. We're just saying they don't belong at the level that they were available in our schools. There are books that were removed from the middle school that are still in the library or at the high school. And so also...
So some of those 19, I might, as a middle schooler, can't get it, but when I go to high school, it'll be there.
Exactly.
Right.
And so we were looking at appropriateness of the book and if it contained obscene material. One of the interesting things about some of these books is obviously the filing had some information about those books. Some of the quotes that if I had here, I could read them to you. Maybe not with the audience, but when the complaint came in, our SIPA internet filter that were required by the federal government to have in place would not allow that to be shared by email within our district.
Oh, your what filter?
The Colorado, or the Child's Internet Protection Act. It's a federal law that districts must have in place to prevent students from accessing obscene content on the internet. So here we have a lawsuit that's quoting material from those books that the SIPA filter required by the federal government will not allow that to transmit through district email because of what we're required by the federal government to have, but these books can be on our shelves. And I guess that's...
So in other words, if a kid is looking to read the book online somehow through one of your computers, it would be blocked.
Depends on how it's fed through the filter.
But that's the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if somebody said, hey, what about this section of the book? And it gets cut and pasted into an email and it goes to a kid, that email wouldn't go through.
That would not go through, exactly. So if we took the content, put it in an email, and tried to send it to anyone in the district, it would block it.
It sounds like, one, you played the preacher from Footloose because you don't want anybody to have any fun. But I'm curious about the Kevin Bacon character here, which is, of course, the parents in the ACLU fighting for allowing dancing. On what grounds are they saying you got to put these books in?
They believe that their plaintiffs should have access. And so right now we have provided their plaintiffs access to those books. There was a donor who gave those books to the district to make sure that while this lawsuit is processed, that those two individual plaintiffs actually can access those books in our library. They're behind the desk, so they're not on the shelf for just any student. But we have provided it for those students.
Are they in the card catalog? I'm sure there are no more.
They're not in the card catalog. Right. No, they were removed and actually disposed of. This happened in August, and we were served December 20th. So after they were removed from the shelves, they were disposed of. So we don't have those original books. Obviously, there's a request for preliminary injunction, which is rather interesting because we don't have the books to put back. And so we had a donor who said, we want to support the district while you litigate this. We'll go ahead and provide the books so that those two students, and the NAACP is also an applicant on, or a a plaintiff on the lawsuit. So any member of the NAACP whose children want to check out those books now have access while we litigate this case.
And if you win, are you going to take those books out of behind the
donor?
library?
The donor gave them to us on a loan basis and wants them back as soon as this lawsuit is resolved.
I want to ask about the process here.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be really clear that a library can't hold every book.
Correct.
It's impossible, particularly a elementary school library. They're limited in space.
Correct.
Every library is.
Mm-hmm.
And so decisions have to be made.
Mm-hmm.
Before you even got here, how were those decisions made?
We had individual librarians who are not licensed librarians. They're not media specialists. They typically are parents who have applied for the job as our librarian. And many of the book companies have gone to this mass packaging of books. So you can buy these 200 titles for $2,000, and we'll send them to you with the code file to upload into your card catalog. And so for years, that's what's happened. Is we've had good intentions on the part of our employees who have said, "That's a great deal. Let me get that 200 more books for my library," and those books came through that process. Some of these books have been on our shelves since the late 1990s.
Really?
Half of these books have never been checked out.
Huh?
Half of these books have never been checked out.
If I was a kid and found out there's some naughty books going on, I would have checked them out. And I can barely read.
Yeah. No, half of these books have never been checked out in our libraries, which is one of the things we typically do during the summer. When we're buying new books, we look at our card catalog and say, which books aren't attracting interest, because we have to create space. To your point, there's only so much space. And so books are weeded every summer. The district tried to be transparent with this and to truly, as an elected board, say, we want to honor the thoughts of our constituents. And that's why those books were actually designed. I can guarantee you there are districts across the state who those books would just disappear. We tried to be transparent because we felt like our board is responsive to our community who elected them.
Do you regret doing it the way you did, in such an open and transparent way, instead of just going, we don't need these books, nobody's checking them out,
I
and
think
got rid of them?
It would have been easier. But I would say at some point, we do need to know, can school districts, and Colorado is a local control state where the power is placed in the hands of the locally elected school board. And so should school boards take this more seriously? And should they respond to their constituents? We choose curriculum, we select the standards that we're teaching in our classrooms, we select the methodology that we use.
So the things I'm hearing is, one, open, transparent process, two, local control of school districts, that these elected officials wanted this, the elected officials are responsive to the constituents. And also I'm hearing, even during this, if there's an emergency and your kid absolutely has to know about these things, the books are there. How much is this costing Elizabeth School District to fight this ACLU lawsuit? And is it just cheaper to give in?
It's cheaper to give in. I think we feel very strongly that we've set down on a path to empower our parents and to turn our district back to focusing on educating our students. That's our purpose, John, is we've seen school districts take more and more parental responsibility away from parents. And I will tell you, I think we as a public school system have done a really poor job because we've taken on way more than we can do well. Again, in Colorado, 40% of kids are proficient in reading, but we're worried about having books that may have obscene content in them in our libraries. Our focus has been on, let's get back and get our teachers back to teaching. Let's get our schools back to where children are learning and gaining the skills necessary to be successful citizens. And let's get out of the business of social agendas.
Parents have the ACLU and the NAACP signing on, footing the bill for their lawsuit. Is there a similar organization defending you in order that taxpayers don't have to pay this?
Yeah, we've actually had a large outpouring of support from individuals, not only here in Colorado, but across the country, who have said, We believe that this has to be settled. This is not settled law. The Pico case in 1982 did not have a majority opinion, and that was the last case that was similar to this that went to the Supreme Court. We only had 3 judges who sided with a plurality decision. The other 2 judges who supported that at that point those books could not be removed from the library did not sign on to the entire opinion. And so this is really unsettled law. There's about 9 different lawsuits right now across the country that are very similar to this.
Is this in federal court?
This is in federal court.
Do you need money? Are you out there with your hat in hand asking people for help?
We have on our website, elizabethschooldistrict.org, an opportunity. Parents United has been raising funds as well for us, and that link is on our website. And again, the outpouring has been strong. So is it troublesome? We're going to ensure that it doesn't impact our students. We already are one of the districts in Colorado that doesn't have mill levy overrides. We operate on the dollars that the state of Colorado has determined that you need to educate children. We don't have additional dollars from our community. We're going to ensure that those dollars go to educating students. We have been very successful so far in raising funds from outside of people who want this to be settled. We don't know that this is a case that will make it to the Supreme Court, but at some point the Supreme Court's going to have to weigh in so that there is very clear direction to school districts across the country as to, is this something
you understand by the time this is settled, your middle schoolers will be in retirement homes.
Maybe not retirement homes, but certainly out of our school district. I think that's very fair to say.
I asked you, are there any other groups helping you? I didn't get an answer to that. Is there the equivalent of the ACLU on the other side helping you?
You know, we've had the ACLJ reach out to us. We've had other organizations of similar nature. Right now we have our attorneys, First and 14th and Jonathan Mitchell Law, who have taken our case and representing us. They are networking with a number of community organizations. So there's not there's not like the ACLU and we have this comparable. We've just had an outpouring of people across the country who have said, we support you being transparent. We support the fact that you are trying to be honest and open and gain parent input, and therefore we want to support you.
I mean, I'm pulled in different ways because anything that when government says, no, you can't look at that, immediately gets my civil libertarian hackles up. But when it comes down to a local control of a school district that had very clear guidelines of participation, when you went through all that process, were there any parents fighting you on that during the process? Were there people like, no, don't ban those books?
We had a smaller portion of parents who came to review those books and said they should be returned to the library shelves. They should be. The overwhelming feedback from our community, almost 4-1, was they don't belong in our library. They don't have educational value. They are obscene in nature, and therefore they should be removed from our library.
So
and
during the process, about 4-1, how many people on your school board?
We have 5.
How many of them voted?
It was unanimous.
All right. So,
it was unanimous.
So it feels like this is what the community wants. Now, you understand the idea of civil liberties is to protect the rights of political minorities, that 25%. But I just don't know how that works in any public library. You know, when you're doing the best job you can, and this is different. People forget, this is not a public library. This is a school library, and it's there to facilitate the education of the kids that is decided on a local basis.
Correct. And I think that's really the key factor here is these are libraries that cater to a certain age group. So our elementary libraries, a child from the age of 5 to a child to the age of 11 or 12 check out a book in that library. And so, yes, in the elementary library, we have our easy reading section where obviously our new readers, our younger students look. But the reality is a student can check out a book anywhere in that library. And we want to make sure the content is appropriate.
And let's leave it on just one last example. Give me one more of these 19.
There was a book called George that used to be called Melissa. It was at the elementary level. And it had some pretty graphic content of describing genitalia in the book, and it was in a library where a 5-year-old could check it
When
out.
you said
see
it was named George,
George, and then it was changed to Melissa. The author,
book was?
the author changed the name to Melissa. It was originally published as George, and then it became Melissa because George became Melissa in the book. And so that particular book, very interesting story. A year and a half earlier, our other elementary school had that book, had a parent complain, and that librarian removed it. It was still in the other school library, and that's where it was discovered as books were being looked at. And so again, that was a book that, again, we wanted to know, parents, what do you think? Should this book be there or should it not? It is not that every book that might contain a trans topic is removed from our library. It's truly the books that had the graphic content, where there was graphic
So are there still
description.
books that have trans content?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's books with LGBTQ topics. There's books, the lawsuit says we remove books because the race of the author, that we don't have African American history or African American stories in our library. It's completely false. We've actually provided in our response to the lawsuit a detailed list of books that are in our library that still have LGBTQ topics. So it wasn't a purging of viewpoint. It was a purging of obscene material, and I think that's critical here.
I know you're not an attorney. Give me your prediction.
I think we will have some wins and we'll have some losses along the way, and I don't think either side is going to be happy with that. So let's say, we respect the legal process. We have provided the detailed evidence to show that we didn't purge books based upon viewpoint. We purged books based upon the obscene content and the inappropriate nature, which is what our school board policy says we should be looking at. We purged those books because of that. We're being accused of purging the books because they touched on LGBTQ topics. Well, of the 19 books, 5 of them actually had LGBTQ content. And there are authors whose other books are still in our library. So we didn't purge all of this author's books. We purged books that had obscene content. And I think that's critical, and obviously not the story being told from the other
But
side.
I can still find Penthouse Forum letters.
Nope, that's not. We never purchased that one. Sorry, John.
This is why I hated school.
Well, and here's the odd thing is we've just approved a charter school that may or may not open next year. They're still working on whether they'll open next year or the following year. The reality is they'll open without a library, and that school will build a library, and obviously build a library of books that they believe support their curriculum. We had
Which may or may not contain these 19.
Yeah. And I will say some of the websites that our curriculum review committee used to look at books are the very websites that districts ordering books use to say, should I order this book or not? And so, we have chosen to remove those where other districts may have chosen never to purchase them. And yet, we're subject to the lawsuit, and other districts have.
That is an interesting point.
So.
Hey, good luck on this. I hope it goes well for you. I'm very curious. I hope I'm alive when the Supreme Court rules on it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.